Welcome to Austin Faith Dialogue. October 31st is a very special day this year. You may think of October 31st being Halloween, or some of you may be thinking about All Saints' Eve. But today on Austin Faith Dialogue, we're going to talk about why October 31st is special this year. Please stay with us.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thanks for being with us in Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg, host for the program, and I hope I piqued your interest. October 31st is indeed a special time for people of all ages in this community, but today it's a very special day because this year, October 31st, has to do with a historic signing, a signing between two very important traditions within Christendom. And I have with me on the program today Laura Lincoln, who is a Lutheran ecumenist, and we have a local parish pastor, Father Larry Covington of St. Louis Parish. Larry, Laura, thanks. Glad to have you in Austin Faith Dialogue. I think October 31st this year is special for a lot of reasons for many, many people. But I'm excited about October 31st this year because it is going to be the signing between Lutherans and Roman Catholics. And let's tell our viewing audience a little bit about that. What's going to happen?
Well, in Augsburg, Germany, representatives from the Vatican and from the Lutheran World Federation, which is a communion of Lutheran churches, 128 different churches, will be coming together to sign this document that says that we agree in substance on this theology of justification, how we're saved.
The theology of justification. Father Covington, are you excited about this signing?
Well, this is so important because this central understanding of how we stand before God, how we are saved, how we are taken from our human condition and through God's grace offered salvation has been a key dividing issue which gave birth to the Reformation in the 16th century. And to say that this key issue, which was a source of division, is no longer a source of division, to me is not exciting. I think it's momentous and really should be seen as one of the key moments of the 20th century, if not the latter half of this millennium.
If we're going to talk about the key moments of the 20th century, maybe we have to go back to the 16th century. And Laura, what happened October 31st, 1517? Tell our viewing audience about that.
Well, that's the day that Luther tacked up his 95 Theses. Essentially, it was just a list that he was posting to introduce academic debate on this topic of how we are saved. And he had 95 points to bring forward, and he was inviting dialogue between his academic colleagues and himself.
And Luther, Martin Luther, was, Larry, a priest, a Roman Catholic priest.
Augustinian monk, an academic, a brilliant professor of theology.
Pretty feisty guy, wasn't he?
And probably a little more than interested in seeing the development of the Christian tradition beyond where it was at his time.
A preacher, a celebrant, as you say, a person.
A parish priest.
Right, an academic.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been to Wittenberg?
No, I'm afraid not.
Larry, have you been there?
I have not. I hope one day to follow the Luther trail.
Yeah, I've done that, and that's pretty exciting stuff, to stand there. Matter of fact, when we went into the cathedral in Wittenberg, there were a group of people from California, and they started singing. I thought maybe we'd break out in that song right now on Austin Faith Dialogue. Before we went on the air, we were talking about singing A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. Luther loved that and gave that to us as part of the legacy. Justification, that's the document. Luther was interested in how we're saved. What were some of the conditions? What was going on in the church, the one holy Catholic Church, in that 16th century, Father?
It was a difficult time, I think, for Western Europe, a time of tremendous unrest, but also really an exciting time. One's often said, why at this time the Reformation? I think in reality, the seeds of the Reformation were planted much, much earlier than this. But it was a convergence of certain things that gave birth to it. It was the right thing at the right time, if a Roman Catholic priest can say that. Depending on your point of view, I guess. You had the birth of nationalism. Up until this time, there was no clear delineation of who was who, but you have a sense of who we are as Germans, who we are as French, who we are as Italians. The Renaissance with a rebirthing, education. I think probably the pivotal thing, the most important thing, is the printing press, which made ideas instantly available.
That point about ideas, I think that's crucial, because even in this day and time, ideas are those elements of life that we share with one another, give back to one another. Matter of fact, is it not true that the statement that we signed in Augsburg is lifting up these ideas that we can say are agreed upon by these people of faith? Was it not true that there was also at that time of Luther that the idea became important, the idea of people, of man, of person? Is that something, Laura, you can respond to?
Well, out of the Renaissance, that was one of the primary things, was lifting up the individual. You see artists working without patrons for the first time. You combine all of those things, and that takes this academic posting into a whole new level.
And when that academic posting took place on October 31st, we're going to get that date across to our viewing audience. On October 31st, 1517, something happened. Luther intended that to be something that theologians and people in the academic community discussed, but what happened, Father? Something happened to those 95 theses.
Well, I think the important thing is that, again, I go back to the printing press. People said, this is something we want to talk about. And I also believe that it became fuel for a fire. Here was something that a nation who was oppressed by taxation could find a way to freedom. Frederick the Wise, the Elector of Saxony, was a great, of course, supporter of Luther. And I believe that one of the reasons that this was true, that he did support Luther so strongly, was this was a way to get back at this heavy taxation that the papacy was putting on a foreign prince in a foreign land for purposes that did not benefit these people.
Laura, what's your response to what Father's just said?
Well, I agree with his perception. The history all combined in the right place at the right time. And Luther himself didn't print up his 95 Theses, but other people got excited about it and put it forward, and the whole thing kind of snowballed.
Luther wanted dialogue, and he got more than dialogue. He got.
But I think the point you made is the connection between the culture, the connection between the theology, the issues of theology, and the political. And I think that's important for people of faith today to recognize, because there seems to be those who are isolationists who want to say, well, we can just take our theology and put it off to the side. But I don't think Luther was doing that. All of those elements were a part of what was going on at the time, 16th century. Would you concur with that?
And Luther was looking for reform. He wasn't looking to break away from anything. He was putting this forward as a way to begin the dialogue, begin a process to move in a direction that he thought was healthier for the church.
And, you know, maybe that's an important point to make as our viewing audience listens to us talk about Lutherans, Roman Catholics, is that Martin Luther was not interested in forming a separate expression or tradition, but Father, he was interested in the one holy Catholic Church.
And he really wanted, as you said, dialogue. He wanted faith dialogue. He wanted people to enter into discussion about some of these issues, or we call them abuses, and abuses they were. There's no one denies that the church had, at this point in time, been involved in nepotism, and I could use several other words. The important thing to remember, though, is that at no point in time was there a bad person or a good person, a bad side, a good side, the good guys, the bad guys. But there was an awful lot of self-interest and self-seeking, particularly among politicians and churchmen. And Luther wanted nothing more than the truth.
And do you think, Laura, then, that what he is saying, what Father Covington is saying, applies to what we're about today with this signing that's going to happen in Augsburg, Germany? That this is a statement of truth between these two faithful traditions of Christendom?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think both traditions bear a history of animosity that grew up at those times, and only at this point, hundreds of years later, have we been able to put aside those emotions that went along with the debate and look at the core of the issues and say, we really do find agreement here.
And this agreement isn't something that we just came up with within the last year or two. This dialogue has been going on for quite some time. Is that true?
Many years, many years. Roman Catholic and Lutheran dialogue has been going on officially for about 30 years. This particular document has been in process for about 10 years. So it didn't just fall from heaven.
It took God a while to give the creation, and it took Lutherans and Roman Catholics a while to give the world this joint statement on justification.
Well, Christians have always had a remarkable propensity for missing the point.
Would you like to elaborate on that, Father?
Probably not.
When this gathering will come together in Augsburg, Germany, and why Augsburg, Germany? Why are these people coming from all around the world to this little community of Augsburg, Germany?
Well, there's a document in Lutheran tradition, the Augsburg Confessions, that spells out the core of Lutheran beliefs, which obviously comes from Augsburg. Also, currently, at the time, the population in Augsburg is about half Roman Catholic and half Lutheran. The community itself sees itself as a place of peace, a place of reconciliation. So it was the obvious choice.
Would you like to be there, Father?
I would really like to be a part of that. I can't imagine anything more exciting than to see history coming into a closure. Of course, now, again, you can't say that simply because we've done this, all Lutherans and all Catholics are now going to be happy, one big happy family.
Oh, why not?
As much as that would be wonderful.
Because what are we saying? What is being said? That we agree on a statement of justification, but we're also being called to more dialogue, to more discussion. And that's what we're going to do in the second half of this program, all right? That leads me right into our break, because we are going to take time to talk about Austin Metropolitan Ministries, and then we're going to invite you to come back with us as we talk more about a statement called justification. Please stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. We're talking about October 31st. We're talking about a signing. You may be aware of the fact that October 31st is a special day within the Christian community. It's known as All Saints' Eve, the day before All Saints' Day. And on this time, some of the people in our society, in our community, will be out trick-or-treating, and others will be gathering for worship, and others will be thinking about, in the Austin community, will be thinking on October 31st, 1999, about what took place on this day, 1517, and what is taking place on October 31st in a place called Augsburg, Germany. And we're so glad that you're a part of this, because we want you to see that history that is being made at this time. As Lutherans, by you, Laura, you symbolize the Lutheran community. We're glad you're here, Laura Lincoln. and you, Father Larry Covington, that you symbolize the Roman Catholic community. And even as those dignitaries, little high muckety mucks, as we call them, huh? Even as they gather there in Augsburg, Germany, we're going to have this for the Austin community to know that something very important is happening. Now, we talked in the first part of the program about justification. Now, help me with this. Is it not true that justification by grace through faith is one of those key doctrinal statements of both Roman Catholics and Lutherans? Is that true?
Yes.
And how would you expand on that then? What does that mean that we now agree upon this statement? It's been almost 500 years since that posting of the 95 Theses there at Wittenberg Church, so long ago in 1517. We have just started dialogue within the last 30 years, this document for the last 10 years. What do you think it means for the church today to do that? And if you were there, what would you be looking for at Augsburg, Germany? What would make you excited?
Just the gathering of people. I'm sure the joy would be tremendous, the excitement, the energy. This is the first time that two churches have come together to sign a declaration of this kind. We've spoken with each other for a number of years, produced all sorts of documents, but this is the first time there's been a signing, an official statement that we agree. It's momentous. It sets a precedent for us.
What's excited me all the time, Father Covington, has been the spirit that the Roman Catholic community in Austin has given to those of us who are not Roman Catholic. And I think when your bishop, Bishop John McCarthy, was installed, and how Bishop Wahlberg and myself, we were invited to represent the Lutheran community. And that was just a powerful event for me personally, and I think also for Pastor Wahlberg, the bishop of the Texas-Louisiana Synod in those days. And it seems to me that this kind of relationship has been going on for quite some time, but there's a difference with what's happening now because of the Augsburg event. What can that be?
I think the important thing, and maybe we should talk a little bit about it now, because people might still be wondering, what do they mean by justification? What is that? And I think if we broke it down to the way people talk about it in a day-to-day basis, particularly as we have hurled anathemas at each other over the years, well, the Lutherans, they believe that all that you have to do is believe and have faith and you're saved. Well, all those Catholics, well, they think they're going to go to heaven by doing good things, and they're saved by their works. And so that's always been this division between faith and works. And I think those are the common issues.
The stereotypes and that kind of polarization that's been part of the parishioners.
Which has been too simple.
Right.
Because you cannot divide those two. They are together. One must coexist with the other. But I believe when you have a divisive event such as the Reformation, and people begin to polarize and go into their corner and lick their wounds and figure out how they're going to defend themselves against the other, then we cease to talk and we begin to build our walls. And that's what happened and has happened over these hundreds of years. And so rather than seek what it is we really understand and what has truly always been in the way that we have read Paul, we have only, as Laura said, just recently sat down and said, what tools will we use? How will we listen? Let's listen to each other and see what we really believe apart from the events that caused our initial division.
And to have that sense of oneness and unity within the body of Christ through this kind of dialogue symbolized by this signing. You mentioned, Laura, that this has been a process. You're an ecumenist. Maybe you might tell the Viewnites, what does that mean to be a person who's involved in ecumenical matters within the church?
Well, I often tell people that I work at trying to get Christians to act like Christians towards one another. Essentially, we're moving towards unity, not uniformity. We are all Christians. To put that first, we weren't saved by grace through Luther. We're saved through Christ. Not saved through the Pope. We're saved by Christ. And to get ourselves to put a little different spin on it, to do, as Larry said, to listen to what we actually share, to that faith that we really do share, so that we can be better ministers in our communities so that we can be partners with one another in the world, so that we don't duplicate efforts, so that we don't divide.
Larry?
And if we can do this, okay, if we can come to a conclusion, agreement on this very central issue, then we also have the tools to continue to work, to continue to listen, and to go into deeper issues that still divide, so that we can become unified. Perhaps it's impossible for there to be one faith, one baptism. Maybe plurality of tradition is part of God's plan, in as much as there is a plurality of the human condition. I can't say whether this is good or bad, but I do believe that if we can come to an understanding that there is a common purpose to which the gospel has called us, and we can stop the reduplication of efforts and come together, that's when Pentecost will happen again.
Laura?
I often use the image of a family in talking about what ecumenism is about. You don't want all the children in a family to look alike. You'd never be able to tell them apart. They would have no characteristics that would benefit the whole. We all are different children in this family, and we want to celebrate those differences. And we are going to have disagreements, and we will continue to disagree. And this signing does not mean that we agree on every point. What it does mean is that we understand that we agree on the essence and that the differences need not be church dividing.
Disagreements do not necessarily mean division, that we're divided. And I think what I hear you saying is that this signing, why it is so important and why we want the Austin viewing audience to be aware of this, that's happening in Augsburg, Germany, is that it's saying that on the very essence of the proclamation, there is a unity between the Lutheran community and the Roman Catholic community. But it doesn't mean we're going to be cloned. It doesn't mean we're all going to look alike, that we're going to be different. Huh?
No.
Well, it's going to happen in Augsburg, Germany, and we'd all like to be there. And with the great budget we have for Austin Faith Dialogue, I'm going to send you there as our representative. Isn't that nice of me, you know? Well, not really. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to invite us to have a part of that. Even though we can't be in Augsburg, Germany with all those dignitaries, a representative of the Vatican, correct, or many representatives, Lutheran World Federation representatives, but you too, along with many others, are working on inviting the Austin community to a celebration here in Austin at St. Louis Roman Catholic Church. Tell us, Laura, a little bit about that, and Larry, jump in and say something about it too.
It will be on November 21st at 4 o'clock in the afternoon at St. Louis Roman Catholic Church. Both of our bishops will be there, Bishop John McCarthy, the Roman Catholic bishop, and Bishop James Bennett from the Southwestern Texas Synod of the ELCA, the Lutheran bishop. They will be there to, in essence, reenact the dialogue that will be taking place in Augsburg between the Lutheran and Roman Catholic representatives there. Well, it'll be a celebration of word and worship and lots of great music.
We're excited about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about the music. You mentioned before we came on the air that choirs will be there and brass will be there, and we've had the opportunity to worship in your great sanctuary, so it should be a very exciting experience. And this is for Roman Catholics and Lutherans, or anybody of faith?
We want to invite the whole faith community, anyone who would like to be a part of this. We're certainly extending an invitation to Christian leaders, pastors from other traditions, to be an active part of this celebration. But it is for the whole community. We want to do a strong witness of this gesture.
I've been repeating October 31st over and over again, but now we're saying November 21st.
November 21st.
And that's a special day also in the church calendar. What day is that?
It's Christ the King Sunday. So it's a great day for celebration. And the reality is both of our bishops are booked on the 31st of October.
Bishop Bennett was already involved in signing a declaration in San Antonio with the Archbishop on that day. And I've come to find out that Roman Catholic dioceses all over are doing this same thing. So we are acting in communion with the whole church in this regard.
And by doing it here in Austin, you are connecting yourself with those people of faith in Augsburg, Germany on the 31st, and saying that we in Austin want to make the same type of statement. If you were going to tell our Christians and people of faith who are watching Austin Faith Dialogue and listening to your discussion on justification in the remaining minutes that we have of this program, what would you say is important about further exploration between Roman Catholics and Lutherans and other traditions within Christendom? What can this lead to?
It's hard to list so many things. A wonderful future for the church. This declaration gives us a foundation of agreement to move from, where we haven't had that. We've had a foundation of separation. And now we have agreement, and we can say, well, gee, there must be other things that are formative to our faith tradition that we need to take a look at and see what we share, what do we have in common, and to begin to not only come together for worship services, but to begin to think of ourselves as partners and to change that.
We're not talking about merger here, are we?
No.
We're not bringing
No.
together these two traditions and merging them.
No.
Something much more important, I think, is being said. And Father?
It's a signal toward a movement, hopefully in the new millennium, of reversing a trend of fragmentation to unity. And whereas I know the ecumenical movement had great hopes of Christian unity, perhaps we need to redefine what Christian unity means. It may not mean that we come together as a single unified governing body, but that we come together as a single church in the larger sense, doing the gospel.
You know, I've always tried to tell people the way I see this is acknowledgement and recognition and affirmation of others' witness, and to be able to share in that so that the validity of what you do at St. Louis and what you do in your Lutheran tradition, that it is valid and true and of God. And that's what we want you to think about on Austin Faith Dialogue. Because what they're inviting you to is to participate with your congregations and other people of faith in this whole process of what it means to be God's people of faith. And so October 31st, 1517, a very special day in the history of Christendom. I don't believe that Martin Luther, Laura, and Larry knew what was going to be happening, but out of that came a movement that changed the course of human history. And October 31st, 1999, a signing in Augsburg, Germany. And they are inviting you, Father Covington and Laura Lincoln, are inviting you to come and be with them November the 21st and to share with them at 4 p.m. at St. Louis Roman Catholic. Come and be with them, for our God is a great and wondrous God. Thanks for watching Austin Faith Dialogue. Peace be with you.